Hi, I'm Rob De Rossi. I'm a Microsoft Dynamics GP support engineer with MicroChannel, and in today's session we're going to be exploring the new features included in the Microsoft Dynamics GP 2016 R2 release. During this session we'll do a review of the current GP roadmap released by Microsoft. We'll then have a look at the business intelligence and system-wide changes overview, financial enhancements overview, distribution and project accounting enhancements overview, and then we'll do a deep dive in GP in each of these enhancements. Now, the current GP roadmap released by Microsoft show that in the next few weeks a new release of GP 2018 will be made available. Now, in this new release there'll be updates to the workflow functionality, the doc attach functionality, HR optimization, which unfortunately doesn't relate to us, as the HR functions within GP are purely for US and Canadian use. Enhancements to the Power Suite, and they'll be including in the top feature requests by GP users from around the world. In about a year's time, Microsoft will be releasing a new version of GP, what they currently codenamed GP Next. And approximately 2 years from now there'll be another release of GP, again called GP Next. So as you can see, Microsoft are committed to the ongoing development and enhancement of the GP application. But coming back to the GP 2016 R2 release, we'll now review the changes that have been included into it. And if we have a look at the business intelligence and system-wide changes, they include Smart List Favorite Protection. Smart List Designer Smart Lists are now available in advanced lookups. Supports the secure connection to management reporter services. Indicates the name of a person editing the batch in the message batches are being edited by another user. And Power BI can now be included on the web client homepage. Financial enhancements, they are distribution line display opens in an expanded manner. The credit limit warning calculation now takes into account unposted credit documents. The POP to fixed assets link can now include taxes. Microsoft now link credit card invoices to the original invoices, so you can see more information when you're reviewing these transactions. You can add completed bank records to the history tables by a process called transaction history removal. And when you're creating new assets in the fixed assets module, you can save them with a suffix greater than 1. Excuse my stumbling there. The distribution and project accounting enhancements show that the tax percentage used on a transaction at the time it was entered. You can now cancel a purchase order when it's linked to a purchasing requisition. There's a new PA timesheet status report. And the project line item distribution window has been added in all transaction entry windows in project accounting. So you can change the distribution accounts being used on transactions at an individual line level. But we'll have a greater look at that as we go forward. So now we'll do a deep dive into it, starting with the business intelligence and system-wide changes. And just excuse me for a moment while I maneuver over into GP. So, Smart List Favorite Protection. Microsoft have now included in your Smart List options the ability to password protect your Smart List favorites. So if you now enter a password here, if you then go to Smart List and call up a favorite, and this is one of my favorites, and make a change, and in this example I'm going to remove a column, we'll call it item type. If I then go to modify my favorite, I'll need to enter in the password to push that change through. If I don't put the password in, then the change won't be enabled. The other change that they've made in relation to the smart list is that now Smart List Designer smart lists are now available as an advanced lookup in a number of windows. So as an example, if I go to cards debtor, if I do my lookup on the debtor ID and select this view here, I now have my Smart List Designer favorites as an option. If I then select that, I can see all my Smart List Designer favorites listed here, which are relevant to this view. If I then select it, that view will then come through and I can select my information based on that smart list. Now this new functionality is available in a number of windows. They're available in lookups for accounts, addresses, customers, employees, items, open documents, open payables documents, prospects, purchase orders, sales document numbers, sales documents, vendor addresses, vendors, and vouchers. I'll just move back to my slide. And as we mentioned, we now support, or Microsoft now supports, a secure connection to your Management Reporter services. What that means is that when you're configuring Management Reporter, you can now use an HTTPS connection to the MR services rather than the standard HTTP one. That does give you greater security when you're connecting to the services. And this enhancement, which was introduced into MR due to the amount of feedback they were getting from MR customers. Now, to be able to take advantage of this new functionality, you do need to be on the MRCU 16 release. So if you're on the lower build, you will need to upgrade to the later release to be able to take advantage of this. Let's just jump back into GP. Now, one of the enhancements that they've now made available is that if a batch is being edited by 2 or more people, and you try to post it, you would just get a message saying that this batch is being edited, and you'd have to scratch your head and wonder, well, who's editing it? Well, now they've enhanced that to actually tell you who is in the batch and who is working on it. So if I go through and I call up a transaction which is assigned to a batch, and I then call the batch up and I try to post it, it's going to say that the batch is being edited by the user ID, in which case it's SA. Because you now know who is working on the batch, you can then go to them and ask them to finish what they're doing and come out of the entry window, whatever, to free the batch up so they can now be posted. And lastly, on this section, you can now have Power Business Intelligence displayed on the web client home. Now this is going to give you more information to the web client users on what's happening within the business. To be able to go through and enable this, it's a number of steps that you do need to go through, and these steps are detailed here on this blog. Now we'll make this information available to you, and I would advise you to review this information to see if this is something that you would like to have included onto your web client home. Okay, financial enhancements. I'll just move back into GP. If I go to Financial Series, and I'll do a journal entry inquiry. Now previously when you did an inquiry within GP and you had a look at the distributions, the lines would only just show with the account numbers. Well, there's been an enhancement made so that now when you perform an inquiry, it shows in an open manner so you can see more information on the transaction. Now this is based on a per user basis. So let's say the last time I came into GP and I closed this window, thank you. Sorry, a bit of a delay. I close this window with the lines not in an expanded manner. Next time I come in and perform the same inquiry, it will show in just the basic information. If I then expand that and go OK, then come in and perform an inquiry later on, it will remember the settings that I used and it will show in the open display information. Credit limits. Just go to our debit card and I'll bring up just one of our customers. Now previously when we had a credit limit applied to our customers, GP did not take into account any credit records that the customer had that were applied but not posted. Change has now been made that when a customer has a credit note, cash payment, anything of that nature, a credit document entered into the system and it's applied to a record but not posted, that is now taken into account during the calculation of credit limit. So that will give you then a more accurate calculation of when you're entering in transactions for customers. Just close that down. Have a look at some of the fixed assets changes. So I come over to the fixed assets setup. We have a look at the fixed assets company setup. We now have a new option where we can include taxes in the acquisition cost when we're capitalizing assets through purchase order processing. So if we've enabled that, we then go to create a new asset after pushing through data information from purchase order processing. We can see that the cost including taxes has now been pushed over to fixed assets. Prior to this release, we would only have pushed through this lesser amount of $238.50. So that can be very useful when you want to include the tax amount as part of the asset cost. Just clear that. Now, credit card payments. When an invoice or record is now paid by credit cards, when you then do an inquiry afterwards, we will now display on the transaction, on the credit card transaction, the invoice information that's been paid off. So if we draw back down onto the document number, we can see that this payment was used to pay off this invoice for the customer advanced 01, or supplier advanced 01. Bank rec. So we now go to routines. We now have under the financial series a new option of reconcile transaction maintenance, and this relates to our bank rec module. What you can choose here is to move your completed bank rec records out of the open tables and move them to a specific bank rec history tables. And what this does is, over time, you get more and more records building up in your open tables within bank rec, and that can have a performance hit on GP. You then do a lookup as an example. It's slow because GP has to churn through many records to return the information, and few of them are going to be relating to your current period. They're going to be old records that are just sitting there. After you run this process, all these old completed records are going to be moved off to a history table, and your performance will improve within bank rec. And you can choose here whether to run this process against all checkbooks at one time or against a specific checkbook. A cutoff date that the system will then scan up to for records that need to be moved off, and you can then mark off which records you would like to move to history once they're found. This is something that I would actually recommend that you do as part of a month end or a quarter end process, because then that'll just help you when it comes to entering in transactions and doing lookups within bank rec. It's been quite a while since that I've been aware that customers have been asking for this, and I'm really quite happy to see that Microsoft have finally come through and put this into the system. And the final new feature in financial areas is again with fixed assets. When you're creating a new fixed assets now within the application, you can give it a suffix ID greater than 1. So if you're creating multiple assets and you want to link them together, you can now do that much simpler. Distribution and project accounting enhancements. Jump back into GP. Now, previously when you're doing inquiries within GP, and you wanted to have a look at the tax information that related onto it, it would show you the tax percentage on the record based on the percentage on the tax detail as it is today. With this change, which has now come through, when you do this drill back, it will actually show you the tax percentage on that tax detail at the time the transaction was entered. So when you have a case where you've got a tax detail where the percentage calculation has changed, when you now review the transactions, it will show you what the tax percentage was used at the time and not the tax percentage that is being used at the moment. Purchase orders. You now have the ability to go through and cancel a purchase order which is linked to a purchase requisition. So if we have a look at this purchase order, it's currently linked to this requisition, and in previous releases of GP you would not be able to cancel this purchase order. Now you're able to do that. You can go in and enter a cancelled quantity. Let me try this again. You again give you a warning that the line quantity is being cancelled and can't be linked again. And if you want to, you can then continue on. Which then cancels the order. You can then go back, review the purchase requisition to determine whether you need to proceed with it, and then enter a new PO for it, or whether you wish to cancel the requisition. Reports. If we go to Reports Project, we now have a new report available to us, PTE timesheet status. If we select this report, it will show us the status of all timesheets that we've entered into the system up to the cut-off dates that we enter. Now this will give you now visibility on all the timesheets that have been entered into the system, and also help you identify if there's any timesheets not entered that need to be put through. Now there's a number of resources available to you on the net in relation to GP. There's product release information, system requirements, what you need for web components, an upgrade hot topic on things to look out for should you be upgrading to GP 2016. And also a detailed information on what's new in 2016 R2 and the 2016 R2 detailed feature documentation. And these are all available at this site, which we will make available to you. Thank you very much for your time.